let's do it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Lauren. Really excited to talk mentorship and building a business of breadth and all of the wonderful things that you've been doing with the Sursy over the last few years. But before we get going, just for folks who are joining us live tonight, this is meant to be an interactive session. Lauren's going to share some of her insights, some stories. If anything resonates with you, if you have a question for her, please feel free to pop it into the chat. And as we're getting started, it'd be great to hear from everyone, your name, where you're calling in from. And if you know Lauren, I would love to know that too. But yeah, ask, chat, participate. I turned off the raise hand feature. Wouldn't know how to help you if you used it anyway. So that's not a thing, but you can chat. Would love for you to chat all evening long. And this session tonight with Lauren is part of a series, part of the Firefly Summer Speaker Series that my company Outpass Trekking is hosting. More information on the schedule and upcoming sessions, as well as links to the YouTube full recordings or past sessions, will be up there soon. And if you're joining and you're like, what the heck is Outpass Trekking? I'm here to help with that. In non-COVID times when event-based businesses can operate, we usually run 4- and 7-day backcountry hiking retreats and 1-day intensives in Austin, Texas, or on the road when we're traveling. I'm based in Austin, but I do love spending summers in Colorado if I can, camping out there and hosting excursions. And really the purpose of Outpass Trekking is to take growth seekers. A lot of times it's entrepreneurs like Lauren, people who have an entrepreneurial mindset, who maybe have an idea, feeling a little bit unhappy in their career and really want to explore next steps in a focused way. And getting back to nature, kind of shedding the weight of technology, the burdens of our everyday lives, is a really wonderful way to get that opportunity to build connections with others and to find really actionable steps towards your next act. So that's a little bit about Outpass. If you're joining us this evening, some of you supported the Black Interior Designers Network. As part of this series, we're donating all ticket proceeds to a nonprofit of the speaker's choice. Lauren chose this wonderful organization. We've raised about $100 for them tonight, which is awesome. Or a little over $100 at this point, which is even more awesome. But the Black Interior Designers Network is really focused on promoting diversity and inclusion inside the interior design space. And I know that that's a really big part of the Circe. So it's wonderful that you chose something in your industry. And the purpose of their organization is to highlight designers of color and to provide business development opportunities to Black designers specifically. So thanks so much to all of you who supported the Black Interior Designers Network with your ticket purchase tonight. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and turn it over to you, Lauren. Would love to hear a little bit about who you are. Introduce yourself to everybody on the call tonight and everybody who will watch later.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, I see a few familiar names on the call. I'm Lauren. I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. I live in Denver now, but by way of Georgia and Texas and California. And it's actually where Sarah and I met. I think, did we originally meet Sarah in California, or maybe it was Austin? We overlapped a couple of different places, like
we did
for a couple weeks at a time, but have kept in touch. And I, like I said, now live in Denver, moved here at the end of 2017. And I've loved it. I miss, hi Morgan, I miss some things. Like I always talk about, man, I miss the ocean or things like that from the coast, but Colorado really has been one of the favorite places that I've lived because of the sense of community that really happens super fast. So I've really loved it. And I started the Sursy almost a full 2 years ago. So it's the real deal, I can say, once we get to a certain year, I think it is. That kind of came out of a complete figment of my imagination after some traveling and staying in a bunch of Airbnbs and just kind of seeing an opportunity, as I like to call it, at the intersection of kind of the way people travel was changing and the way people buy is changing. And so I just, I know that we'll get into it and I'm sure you have questions, but that is what I'm doing mostly full time right now. So now it is my main thing with some side hustles on the side, which has been a fun and exciting and challenging shift given the current state of the world.
Yeah, that's actually a super big step to take it full time. And you've had now 2 years of experience kind of building the Sursy up. So I'm really curious from your perspective, And this is kind of like my first question of you for the evening, and it's for everybody on this call too. Would invite you to participate. Lauren, if you knew that you absolutely could not fail, you have all this experience building the Sursy, what would your next goal be?
Well, shit, I guess I would have like 5 motels at this point. I mean, that's my goal, right? It's really hard for me to think about any other dream, like even walking on the moon or something like that maybe would be my goal if I could really do anything. But I think the really fun part about where I'm at right now is I'm on a path to do exactly what I want to be doing. And that's been a lifetime goal of mine. So that's fun. But yeah, probably walk on the moon or something more exciting than like building a business. I don't know.
You seem to have had like a lot of fun building this business over the last few years though. And you mentioned this motel project and like wanting to do a little bit more of that. I'm curious, how did you get into commercial real estate? It seems to be a little bit of a departure from the shoppable stays and that thing. Tell me a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
I know. I feel like I'm still even learning. Like earlier today, someone was like, "Oh, CRE." I was like, I now know that's commercial real estate, but I just found out that little acronym. And so I don't know how I got into it other than I just kind of started. The original goal was, oh, I want to build this hospitality brand. I'm a big fan of Bunkhouse Hotel Group, which I think some people know, especially if you're in the Austin area. Liz Lambert is a big idol of mine. And so when I was living in Austin, that was my first introduction to, wow, like you can build spaces that are so cool and create, like just that your atmosphere creates such an experience, what you're around and who you're around, and that ambiance is what factors into an experience. So I knew I wanted to do it then, I think. But it was a layering of, in Austin, I worked for a tech startup and I didn't even know at the time what kind of experience I was getting, but I was able to be a part of, building my desk on the first day. And then, 3 years later, we're being acquired by GoDaddy. And I was a part of, in a very small way, that pitch process and building teams and figuring out the operations of growing a baby company into this massive organization. And like I said, I was a really small part of that, but I think at that pivotal point in my career at 22 years old and being able to just say, yeah, do you want to manage a team? Sure, we need someone to do it. And then going to San Francisco and working for an agency that had a real family feel to it. And it was really the same kind of mindset, just like, you want to do it? Sure, someone's got to do it, like get to it. So I think it was a little bit of my experiences that kind of formed the path of entrepreneurship, but then also just gave me the experience and the connections to really formulate what I wanted to do. Because I don't think when I was in Austin, I was like, I want to develop a boutique hotel brand and build that out. I don't think I was able to vocalize that really until 2 or 3 years ago. So
I know that that's an encouraging message for me as an entrepreneur, that you don't have to have it all figured out, or we don't come out of the womb having our sort of goal and what we want to build in life figured out, for sure. But one thing that really stuck out to me from when I was first talking to you about participating in this series, and you've touched on kind of several of these things that you've made part of the Sursy as a business, but you described yourself as a maximalist, as somebody who kind of rebukes the notion that focusing on one thing, even in business, is the right strategy. I remember you telling me it was a strategy, but not your strategy. Could you share a little bit more about that and how that has come into play in the Sursy?
yeah, I feel like as long as I've at least known myself, I've always had my hand in like 9 things at once, for better or for worse. Sometimes it's not the greatest, but I kind of think that society, and even like how I was raised, right? Like my dad was an engineer. His dad before him was an engineer. You picked a career path and you followed that and you did that. And I didn't intentionally buck at that notion. I think that's the right path for so many people. And that's the most direct way to be, successful, as society says, is to pick something and then dive in. But I think that there's a lot of value that comes out of having a diverse skill set, just like, diversity in friend groups and diversity in people that you hang out with and work with and learn from can add value as well. And I just always was like, I don't know, in my 20s, I want to live in as many different cities and work for as many different cool companies as possible. And I've done that and I don't regret it at all. If anything, I think that it's given me perspective beyond my less than 10 years of experience that I don't think I would have gotten just picking one path and going with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
that totally makes sense.
yeah.
You described a little bit about kind of this growing up and the influences that you had that kind of led you to believe that focusing on many things and really pursuing lots of passions, if you have lots of passions, is a great strategy for you. And that's definitely come across in how you've built the Circe. But I'm curious, from your perspective, has there been any times where that strategy has worked against you in building this company?
Yeah, all the time. Like sometimes I'll pick up a hobby. Like in college, I remember like second semester senior year, so enough time to do like nothing. I was like, I'm gonna just join the rowing team, and all my friends were like, why? Like what? Like I don't know. I just want to see what it's about. And so there's like times where I'll choose to do something. I get an experience out of it. To me, I didn't like get a uniform. I didn't compete ever. Like I never was on the rowing team, but I'm like, no, I did that. Like that's great. And so I don't think I ever regret just trying things when, again, kind of the societal norm is like you don't win unless you cross the finish line. And it's like, no, I tried it, didn't like it, moved on. Like had that experience.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Met a few cool people. Kind of, so.
In the context of the Circe, like trying sometimes things, you know, they have a real financial toll, or it can be something that, you know, takes the business. How do you know, the Circe has 6 different parts to it. How do you try something, make it low risk enough that you can try it, but also what's the framework that you use to decide if you're going to continue pursuing it, or if it's going to become rowing, something that you tried and you're going to set down?
I don't know. I'm like trying to formulate a like smart answer while you're talking about that, but I have this tendency to just kind of go for things with a certain air of confidence that's rooted in nothing. Some people would call that like naivety, but I think that it's a confidence in my ability to figure it out, my confidence in my ability to problem solve. And so, you know, I quit my day job probably too early, but I at that point felt like, no, I have the experience and like a little bit of a runway where I can see if I just dive in, I'll get there. And I think that I'm a pretty risk averse, right? Like I'm not afraid of risk at all, almost to a fault probably. But I think that that's a great privilege of being on the younger side of my career, is that what's the worst that can happen, I guess, is how I kind of look at things, is like, okay, the worst that can happen is I'll trip and stumble and fail. And then I've got experience that I could approach a company and be like, hey, so what have you been doing the last 3 years? Be like, well, I tried to build a business. It failed. It's not going to, but you know, I would be able to have that kind of grit that comes from just going for it. And so I'm proud of that part of my journey of just doing it no matter what.
Yeah, that's definitely a sign of real perseverance and dedication. Although I can imagine there's times when you feel like your confidence in yourself is low. How do you bring yourself back to that place of power where you're like, no, I believe in myself to figure this out?
Yeah. I mean, I'm surrounded by really good people. Like, you know, my boyfriend is a huge support. My family is a huge support. Even when I call them and I'm like, hey, I have this great idea, they're like, oh, I'm sure you do. Like, because it's just all the time. I'm always thinking and kind of strategizing about what's next. But I've got a really strong group of friends from, you know, every single point in my life, and that strong network, and just kind of my family, my strong women in my family that have that kind of can-do mentality. It pushes you and it makes it so that it's not so daunting on the days where it feels like you're just in a ditch and there's no way out. You know, someone's willing to help and someone has experience that can pull you out of that.
Yeah, leveraging your network and leveraging your support system.
Yeah.
The way to go.
Yeah.
I want to bring us back. You mentioned, you know, just a minute or two ago that you thought you maybe left your full-time job a little bit too early. Share with the folks on the call when you left your full-time job, because I have immense respect for the timing around this and what that experience has been like.
It was in November, and I'd done my first big interior design project on my own. I had just finished it. And so like, again, confident me, I was like, perfect, I've done one, I can do more. So I left, and it was after a lot of, I wasn't happy in the environment. It wasn't adding to my trajectory in life or things that I really wanted to focus on. And so I knew that I wanted to leave, and I like most things, again, just kind of made the decision on a whim. It came up in conversation with my boss, and we were talking about planning for the next year. And I was like, I'm not going to be here next year. And he was super appreciative. I mean, I think people sometimes, your boss wants you to succeed, you know, like people that you're around want you to succeed. And it really was a conversation that became, okay, cool, I'll stay for a month and help wrap things up and, you know, bring whoever might fill my shoes up to speed as much as I can. And I'm around to help. And so it was a really cordial parting of ways. And then I had the holidays, and then, you know, coronavirus hit. And so I was managing at that point a second big interior design project, and we did it. I'm not going to say it was easy, because managing, you know, a team of contractors and subs and all that are on site in the middle of a global pandemic, when no one, you know, there's FaceTime and there's Zoom and all that existed. But I think that even had it been a couple months later, I would have maybe had my sea legs a little bit more underneath me than trying to figure out, you know, quality of care with clients and that sort of thing amidst this shit show that the world's going through. I mean, for lack of a more eloquent way of putting it.
Yeah, it truly is a shit show right now. And it's incredible that you've been able to manage some interior design projects even throughout this
really
period.
Great clients. They were really patient clients. So there's that.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about who professionally has supported you in a mentor capacity with the Circe. Like, who is this person?
Yeah. So I think my first ever mentor, like fresh out of college, was this guy, Scott. He worked for that startup that I mentioned, and he kind of ushered me into this job as a baby, being like, yeah, here, come sell social media software. And that was my first experience with having someone help me if I just asked. And so I think in a way that kind of shaped my approach to careers and jobs and needing development in a mentor capacity or otherwise. I just ask, and more times than not, people are willing to help. With the Circe, I went and reread the email today, actually, and it's kind of embarrassing. But I found Nicole, who is my business partner, client, friend, mentor, boss in some fact. Like, we are so much in the weeds together, but I found her because I wanted to do this shoppable Airbnb concept, and I didn't have a rental property. And so I just started messaging people with cool houses on Airbnb. Like, I don't know, probably hundreds of them. I'm sure it was like, hi, you know, please help me. She responded and said, I'm an architect in Denver, because the site does redact a lot of contact information if you're not, you know, booked. And so it's like, I'm an architect in Denver. If you can find me, I'll take a coffee with you. And I was like, cool. Nicole, architect, Denver, like went on a Google hunt, and she took a coffee date with me. And that was in February of 2018 or 2019. So yeah, just over a year ago. And I'm in her office right now, and we work together on a daily basis. She's the architect for the motel. She and I feed work to each other as an architect and a designer. We go to coffees, we go to beers, socially distanced, of course. But it has been really impactful to have someone open me into their lives in such a way where she has 2 architecture firms of her own. She is, you know, got 20 years on me, and is able to, I feel like I can pull my weight, but I have so much to learn. And so I'm pulling my weight, and at the same time getting this incredible opportunity to learn directly from the source in an industry that's so directly related to what I want to be doing. So it's been, I think, a little bit of luck, but, you know, I kind of hate terming it that way, because I also put a lot of effort into trying to find those connections, but there's always a little bit of luck, I think. So.
Yeah. I mean, that is honestly the most unique way I've ever heard of sourcing a mentor. Where did that idea come from to message a bunch of hosts on Airbnb? And was there an ask that was a part of that? Like, you know, I know she kind of sent you a little bit on a scavenger hunt, which you totally accepted. And that's a really cool way to find a mentor. But I'm curious how you structured that initial ask for hosts.
I said something along the lines of, I have this idea to make Airbnbs shoppable. I want to design your place. I think by designing it, you'll make more money, and I can try out my, you know, concepts. This could be a win-win. Like something along those lines, but like super short, not not really thinking that I would get a response. If anything, it would be like, although generally people either immediately get it or immediately don't. If I say shoppable Airbnb, they're like, oh yeah, or I have to go into this long spiel about explaining it. And so she, I think, got it enough, but also just, she said she got a good vibe from me and it was mutual. So I think there was immediate trust in the partnership, which is really fortunate.
Pretty special, honestly.
Yeah.
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 So you found her, you went on this like Google scavenger hunt for an architect in Denver named Nicole.
Yeah. Found her.
How did the first meeting go? And, because I can imagine that, and from my own experience setting up mentorship relationships, it can be a little bit awkward at first to be like, hey, I could really use your help. How did you navigate that?
I had a little presentation, like a pitch deck of sorts, the V1 version of it. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And obviously there was some negotiation if she was like, at the end of it, you can try your concept, but I'm not going to go out of pocket to let you do that in my house. And so how can we make this mutually beneficial? And so I was handling all management, all of her bookings on Airbnb, guest communications, cleanings, everything in order to earn the ability to use her home. And so it was interesting. Like our first coffee date was really just getting to know each other and kind of establishing that initial rapport, I guess. And then we went to the actual Airbnb and walked around together, and I put together some design boards for what I wanted to do. And she was like, okay. And even she said, she was like, this feels crazy to just dive into like this. But at the same time, I just feel I have a good gut read on it. So I'm going to go for it. And here we are, like a year and a half later. So yeah, it's been really fun.
That is so awesome. So tell me how, because it seems like it was a really mutual fit at first and you had a really great experience kind of getting the relationship going. Have there been any hiccups along the way and how did you manage that? So that sounds like a really important and impactful relationship for you.
It is. And I wish that I had some sort of like learning that I could shed light on, but it has been the easiest relationship and things to navigate. I think again, because it's a genuine win-win, right? Like she feels like she's getting something out of it. I'm in her office, 10, 20 hours a week doing work for her 2 architecture firms. That's almost like an apprenticeship of sorts. And, I take care of her Airbnb still. She doesn't have to lift a finger on that. It is, as I first pitch, making a good amount more money because of how it's designed and the experience around it. So I think it's just neither of our expectations are too far away from each other's, if that makes sense. And we're also both very honest and open with how we're feeling at any given moment. And so I think one speed bump that we're getting to in the relationship right now is really figuring out what her ongoing involvement in the Circe will be. Mm-hmm. So she's obviously giving as an investor of sorts, she's giving all of the architecture work needed to complete this motel project. Well, we have to figure out what that means. Is that equity? Is that a certain stake in the actual property? And those are all conversations that we are having really openly, but that neither of us have had before. So I would say that that's probably the biggest speed bump that we'll have, right? Because it's my business child and I have such emotion poured into this, but at the same time, so does she, because she's kind of been there for the whole ride, which is pretty cool. And I don't know that I would go as far as to say, oh, I would never be able to do it without her, but kind of I wouldn't have been able to get here, and definitely not this fast, because there's a lot of experience that she brings to the table and connections that have immensely allowed me to just run with the idea in a way that I probably would have had to do a lot more homework or learning on my own had she not stepped in to kind of guide me. So.
Yeah. And this is your first time, you're a first-time entrepreneur, right?
Yep. Well, I had a scrapbooking business in college. It was legit. So second time.
Time entrepreneur.
Might pull it back around.
Hey, it could be another arm to the Circe someday. You never know. Scrapbooking may come back.
I wanted to have a scrapbooking wine bar, and there will be a wine bar at the motel. So, not too far off.
Not too far off. But so many aspects of building the Sursy are new to you as an entrepreneur. And it sounds like Nicole's been really instrumental in providing you access to people and experiences to learn. But for, this sounds like this conversation that you're having about next steps in your business is new to both of you. How do you approach things as an entrepreneur that are new to you? And where do
A
you
lot
want
of
to go
research. Yeah, I do a lot of research. And just talking to people. I mean, I think I probably had 3,000 coffee dates, whether that was like on the phone or in person, for the better part of 2019, where I would just pitch the idea and pitch the idea again and talk to someone again. And then they would say, oh, you should talk to my uncle's brother's friend's sister's wife. And I was like, perfect, tomorrow at 9. And so I think like asking enough people and doing the research to learn what the hell you're talking about you got to do both. But I think then I also don't act like I know everything, because I don't. And that has some wins as well, because I think there is a certain, I don't know what the word is, but like, I don't love the word authentic, but that's kind of what it is. Like, I go to people and have a genuine question and I'm like, help me. I'm trying to do this. And I've even gotten support. Like, the mayor is behind this project and I've had the opportunity to pitch to the freaking mayor. What? And I don't know, there's some community support and some big players in the commercial real estate game locally that have really, really helped me. Not the least to mention my friends and family that just step up. Hey, have you tried this? Hey, have you talked to this person? Oh, I'll help you with this logo design. I'll help you with building your pitch deck. It's really humbling to go through this process, because so many people at the end of the day believe that I'll make something out of it. And that alone is really, makes me keep going.
Yeah,
So,
super powerful.
yeah.
That beginner mindset that you were talking about, that's something that a mentor in my life shares with me pretty frequently, because I will use the word beginner in almost a sense of cutting myself down, like sort of establishing that like, hey, if I screw up, it's okay because I'm new here.
Yeah.
And she reminds me frequently that being a beginner has a lot of advantages, and having a beginner mindset can bring a lot of value as an entrepreneur. So I'm curious, has there been a time when you felt like your beginner mindset, or being kind of new and being open and honest about that, has really helped the Circe thrive, or help you thrive?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's all sorts of phrases or expressions that people have of like, can't teach an old dog new tricks or something. And it's because people have a set way of doing things or a set way of looking at things. And so I think with this concept in and of itself, I'm trying to turn 3 different industries a little bit on their head. And at the end of the day, like, is it crazy innovative? Am I walking on the moon? Am I curing cancer? No, but I do think that there is a importance to bringing those industries back to community that I am looking at with a different lens because of my lack of experience. And so that's the hardest thing, though, to get over, is that you will be told on any journey in the entrepreneurship world by someone that you really respect, that know so much more than you, oh, that idea is not going to work, or you need to look at it differently. And it's very challenging mentally to be like, I respect you still. I don't agree. I'm going to go with my gut, when my gut knows that like I have no idea what I'm doing, but it's worked out so far. So at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't know, there's got to be something to just using that beginner mindset as a advantage, because sometimes it is. We can look at things with a more fresh perspective than someone who's been doing it for years and years. And those people have their own, positives that they bring to the table for obvious reasons. But
yeah, absolutely. I thought it was really interesting that you talked about bringing community back to these industries. And I'm curious, could you clarify which industries you mean? And I'm just curious your perspective there. Like, is community missing, and when and why did that happen?
Yeah, I think for me, like retail, hospitality, and design are the 3 industries that I am trying to play in and fuse, for lack of a better way to put it, but bring them all together to one experience. I think experiential as a word is a buzzword right now in marketing industries and otherwise. But it represents what's happening across many, many, many different industries, which is this focus on bringing people together and gathering and what kind of experience you're having. You don't just go to a store anymore. They have these crazy installations, and it's all about creating that space and that experience based on your surroundings. And so I think if I were to really boil down the Circe as a hospitality concept, like big hotels have gift shops and they have restaurants and they have rooms that you can stay in. And some of them even have stuff that's for sale. Like, oh, you can buy this $6,000 painting in the hallway. I'm like, cool. But but it's the same painting that's in all of the rooms, that's in all this stuff. And so I think there's this really cool community building aspect. At least it's what I want to keep at the forefront of shopping local, sourcing local, having people visit, but giving them the local experience where it's not just like, oh yeah, this is where I get my favorite tacos. It's like, here's where I get my favorite tacos. Also in your room, that mattress was made in Colorado. Those sheets were made in Colorado. All of the artwork was handmade here in Colorado, where it's, I think, creating a really small ecosystem. And it's kind of funny because coronavirus has made people stay put more so than they might have otherwise. Mm-hmm. And so in a very weird way, this concept almost reinforces this need to localize our economy in that way, in those design, hospitality, and retail industries.
Yeah, you're totally right. And that's definitely been a big theme for really this decade, the sharing economy, bringing more community to spaces that traditionally haven't had community. And of course, the focus on going local. Have you encountered any pushback to those kind of new and novel ideas around these industries?
I don't think so. I think the biggest challenge is that a lot of the handmade stuff that I'm selling and curating in these spaces, it costs more. Why? Because a real human is making it in their garage as their part-time job. And I think that is sometimes forgotten, that like, yes, you can go to Amazon and maybe that is what you need to do because that's what you need to do. And that's the price point that you're shopping at. But I think if you can, and a lot of folks, at least that are in my circle of friends, appreciate paying for, even if they're on a super tight budget, they would rather save and buy something of quality that they know the money's going in this person's pocket, as opposed to, you know, buying a big corporate experience. And the same with like a big retail store. There's always going to be probably some sort of need for those bigger corporations, but I don't know. Does that answer your question? I feel like I tangented kind of, but
no, definitely answered my question. And it brought up another one for me, which is that, you know, you've kind of taken this new and novel lens to these industries, and that's how the Circe has come to be. And I'm curious, do you have a perspective on creating a better experience for yourself as an entrepreneur, as a solo entrepreneur in this business? That term doesn't get, there's a lot of associations with it, especially in the early years. Yeah. And has your experience lived up to that stereotype? And if not, how's it been?
I don't know. I think for the most part, I've really enjoyed it. I finally feel like I can call myself an entrepreneur. I still don't call myself a CEO because I feel like I haven't earned it yet in what I'm doing, which for better or for worse. But I don't know. Like I said, I've got a really good network of people around me that have made it, made me not feel crazy as much, or like a faker. What is the word? Like a
imposter.
Thank you. Yeah, like an imposter, because there's times where I'll be in the room with people that I really admire or that have done it. But at one point, all of those people were, you know, 29 years old, just kind of going for it. And so I think I just need to keep that mindset. But I've overall really enjoyed it if I can stay away from those, you know, feelings of self-doubt and whatnot.
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome kind of plagues us all at one point or another, or for me, nearly every day. But sometimes you can use it to your advantage.
Totally.
You mentioned that you feel now you can finally call yourself an entrepreneur, and that sounds like a real moment of permission that you've given yourself. When did that happen for you, and was there anything tied to it?
I don't know. I think I was like updating my byline on LinkedIn, and I was like, sure, I'm doing it. I'm doing it full time. So like, hell yeah. I don't know. No, I can't think of any one moment in time except for when I opened the first, like Nicole's Airbnb, and it was open and we had this big like open house party. So we called it, and people bought tickets. We raised a bunch of money for nonprofit, and people were buying stuff and they stayed there. And the first guest we had booked bought something. It was like a small piece of art, but like, I was just like, hell yeah, like, this is working. Cause I had no basis other than I was like, this is a good idea. This is a good idea, right? Like, this is going to be great. And I had no basis for that. So when it actually was working and gave me the confidence to be able to leave my job, even though, again, probably too early, but when is ever the right time? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that was probably it, like last summer.
I ask everybody on this series why and what was a part of their decision to leave full time if they've done that. And get the same response. It's just like, there's never really is a right time. It's like you have the things that are important to you and you make it work otherwise.
Exactly.
Going back to that story you shared about the first sort of guest in that cabin buying a piece of art, sounds like a huge win for the business. I could totally see it in your face. You totally lit up. How do you celebrate wins that you get, working on this?
I don't know. I went to sleep. I was trying to sleep early. I don't know. I do like getting away from phone and email because I'm a little bit addicted to the work sometimes, but it's because I really like it. And I do think workaholic gets a really bad rap, like the term. I'm like, no, this is what I've been working so hard to do, is be able to do this work that I've wanted to do full time for so long. And so, I just try to keep that mindset. But when I'm not doing that, I like to glamp, not camp, but I do camp, but 2 nights max. And get out of town. Like I mentioned earlier, going to New Mexico, going to see family. I'm fortunate I've got family in Oklahoma and Minnesota and California and North Carolina. So kind of all over New York. So BC, before COVID, I liked to travel and go see friends from all over. But these days, I don't know, I'm kind of becoming a homebody. My house has never looked better.
Same.
Super, super organized, all that stuff. So, yeah.
And I like how you pointed out the vibe you have around the word workaholic. It can be a real privilege for somebody who's been essentially working 2 jobs full time to finally get the opportunity to spend all of your time on that side hustle. So that's really cool.
There are some days where I'm like, having insomnia and it's like 2 a.m. and I'm like writing down notes beside my bed, like, you should be doing this, or it's just in my head, keeping me up. But like I said, my boyfriend keeps me pretty level-headed. He's like, come on, we're gonna go hang in the backyard. I'm like, all right, here we go. I can do that. I can turn off. But I like the work I'm doing, and I think there's still a lot to be done, but it's forming and I can see it, which makes it even more exciting to keep kind of running after it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We just have a few minutes left, so I'm curious to get your imparting wisdom for the audience here. I know. Well, I guess I have a few specific questions for you, and I know that I'm still in that space where I'm like working full time and, have this side hustle. There may be people on this call who are considering at one point pursuing their dream and leaving their full-time gig for that. What do you say to those people who have an idea in the back of their mind and they're not sure they're ready to pursue it?
You're going to be pissed when someone else does it. That's the imparting wisdom. It's like, if you have a good idea and you've, done your homework and it's going to be great, then why not try it out? Like, literally, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You'll just fail and you'll be fine. I mean, there are challenges that will come along with that. Like, if this does not work, I'm not saying that it's just going to be like, oh, easy peasy. There's a lot of emotional heartbreak that would come out of that. There's financial challenges that would come out of that. So I don't mean to make light of it, but I think that you got to just try, and that try might be a completely different try than fully going for it. But that doesn't mean that you aren't fully going for it just because you're keeping a day job to, pay bills. That's an important piece of the puzzle. So, yeah.
I love that.
Go for it.
I have one final question for you. I lied. We talked a lot about Nicole, your mentor, and how important and impactful she has been for you personally and in the founding and building up of the Sursy. What do you say to somebody who has a mentor in their life and they're looking to really get the most that they can out of that relationship? What's your advice?
I guess just show up, right? It goes both ways. So I know at this point that I have skills that I can help bring to the table to make her life easier, to help her businesses thrive, that's and away from me and away from the Sursy. So I show up because she keeps showing up for me and keeps kind of pulling me in. So I try to be that same level of there. I mean, perfect example is today she said, let's have an Alpine start on Friday. I was like, I do not know what that means. She was like, Alpine start. Like she wants to be at the office at 6 a.m. and have like a go get a meeting. We have some stuff to submit, like plans to submit. And I was like, okay, because that's, that might sound super psycho to so many people, but it's fun to me to show up and be there, to help her get shit done that's unrelated to and doesn't necessarily benefit me because she's doing that for me. And I can't wait to pay it forward one day when I can.
Yeah. It's a real two-way relationship, which is super cool.
Totally.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time. Lauren, can't thank you enough for joining me tonight for this conversation. If anybody on the call is interested in learning more about the Sursy, there's a new newsletter that you have that you can sign up for. You're also on Instagram at the Sursy. Anything you want to share about the newsletter real quick?
I've only done one, but it's going to be great. It'll be fun. I am intending to grow it to really share some behind the scenes, and I'm pretty open and honest on Instagram too. I don't really use any other social platforms, but I think if you're interested in my journey, I am very candid on both and intend to make the series the kind of e-newsletter where I'm sharing a lot of the motel journey, because it will be a little bit more detailed than a social post.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks
for everyone who is here today. Super appreciate your presence, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thanks so much.
Thanks everyone.